Over the past few months, I have been making videos very intentionally ignoring what has been going on in this world. I have been led to focus on Yah and lead Yasharel to repentance and renewal. I recognize that when you turn on social media, when you watch the news, if you listen to a majority of these pastors, really it seems wherever you turn, people are not being filled with the truth, but only with distractions of every kind. And it is clear to me that if we as believers are not intentionally focusing on Yah and making Him the priority, we will be lost in the agendas that are against us right now. And so I have been intentionally making videos about Yahuwah and His Torah, as well as discussing end times Bible prophecy in the middle of the week. The reason being because we need to make sure our focus is on Yah at all times, because we are seriously under attack, and I do not think that most people know it or are aware of it. I tried to start this video with a clip from the Mission Impossible movie that released last year, because that one scene really stood out to me, and to me, it is the very basis of what is going on in the world right now.
The world is changing. Truth is vanishing.
You see, the movie itself, in the middle of all the action, was a huge metaphor of this world agenda that we are in, where the entity that they are referring to is Satan. But what grabs my attention right now is the scene in the beginning when discussing the agenda. They explain how everything digital is under attack, and the very truth as we know it is under attack. They spoke about how it first started online, on the news, and on social media. And that was little of concern to them because it often suited their purposes. And then they went into what really concerned them, saying it hacked into Saudi Arabia, which is a huge part of the current agenda right now. Then it went into our telecommunications, the Federal Reserve, the stock market, the national power grid, the FAA, and the branches of the military. All different parts of the agenda that we are preparing for when we know about this great reset. Anyway, what really got to me is the ultimate goal. And the ultimate goal was to attack the very truth as we know it.
The full force of its energy is now directed at a single objective.
The world's intelligence networks.
The very truth as we know it.
And that scene really stood out to me for multiple reasons, of course. But with all that is going on right now, the predictive programming to me is all too real. And so while I've been focused on the Torah and I have more to say, I need to pause briefly and give a major warning to all that will listen. It is imperative that you completely focus on Yahuwah right now and make Him the priority. Understand your faith and what you are waiting on Yah for, and do not be distracted. The hard to hear truth is that most people around you will be lost, but you must make sure that you are not. The truth is now completely under attack, so much that it's completely lost, and if you're not focused on Yah, you're going to fall. There is a lot going on right now. And in the midst of all of it, right now, it is our minds that are completely under attack more than ever before, and that's saying a lot. But soon it will become physical, and if you're not girded up in the truth and do not truly understand what you are waiting on Yah for, you are going to fall. This is a sincere warning to not be distracted. I'm going to explain why. Let's begin. Okay, so let's be clear on what's going on right now. I'm not sure if it's truly recognized that the world is right on edge, but the narrative in the mainstream is screaming out that change and problems are on the horizon and ready for escalation. It's the same problems that have been brewing over the past years, but they're now said to be at a boiling point. Let me just say that the news media in America right now is more of a joke than it has ever been. It's literally the tabloids. They are being very clear and unambiguous that they are in distraction mode. They desire to distract us. The rest of the world is getting different news than what the United States is getting. And this really can only be for one reason. Let me show you. This started last month.
Shifting our focus to the other war now. Russia has sent out a harsh warning to the West. President Putin has said that if Ukraine strikes deep into Russia, the West will have to face serious consequences. Listen to it yourself.
The representatives of countries that are NATO members, particularly in Europe, particularly in small countries, should be aware of what they're playing with. They should remember that these are primarily countries with small territory and dense population. And this factor they should take into account before they speak about strikes deep into the Russian territory.
The warning is loud and clear. Putin has threatened a global conflict. Pay attention to the words that he's used. NATO countries with small territory and dense population should think twice before speaking of strikes on Russia. Without taking any names, the Russian president has hit out at France and Germany.
Yeah, and the West responded to this warning by actually doubling down. France has already said that it's ready to send troops to Ukraine.
French President Emmanuel Macron opened the door on Monday to sending troops to Ukraine after a meeting with European leaders that aimed to send Moscow a message of Western resolve over support for Kyiv. Speaking to reporters after the talks, Macron said while no consensus was reached on deployment, France could not rule out a potential later need for it to ensure Russia does not win the war.
We should not exclude that there might be a need for security, which then justifies some elements of deployment. But I've told you very clearly what France maintains as its position, which is strategic ambiguity that I stand by. Nothing should be excluded to pursue our goals.
Later, Slovakia's Prime Minister said several NATO and EU members were considering sending soldiers to Ukraine on a bilateral basis.
French President Emmanuel Macron has reiterated that he hasn't ruled out sending troops to Ukraine. He told The Economist the issue would, quote, legitimately arise if Russia broke through Ukrainian front lines and if Kyiv made such a request.
Russia's President Vladimir Putin has threatened serious consequences if Western countries allow Ukraine to use Western weapons to strike targets in Russia. So far, most of Kyiv's Western suppliers have said their arms cannot be used to hit targets on Russian soil. But France's President Emmanuel Macron said this should be allowed in some cases. Washington has ruled out such a possibility for US weapons. The debate is intensifying as Russian forces appear to be gaining ground in eastern Ukraine.
This was the rhetoric from a few months ago, up until late May. Europe, mostly led by France, has been saying that they will get into the war in Ukraine, but the rest of Europe did not agree yet. And then Putin gave a warning to the West if they did enter in the war and supply the weapons that would strike Russia, that would bring a global conflict. So then what did the West do? The last week of May, everything changed, and Europe changed their stance and approved Ukraine to use their weapons to strike Russia.
My message is that I think we should now consider those restrictions, because by having too many restrictions, we are tying one hand of the Ukrainian armed forces on their back, because they're reducing their capability to defend themselves, especially in light of the nature of the fighting now taking place in the Kharkiv region, where the Russians can be protected by the national border, which is more or less the same as the front line.
Let me give you some context here. If you've been following the Ukraine war, you would know the restrictions the United States has put on Ukraine's use of its arms. Since the very beginning, American shipments of sophisticated weapons arrived into Ukraine. US President Joe Biden asked Zelensky to never fire them inside Russian territory and to only use them for its counteroffensive. Stoltenberg was referring to these restrictions. By saying that, he's implied that maybe the time has come for Ukraine to start using the Western arms to launch attacks inside Russia. If that wasn't enough to irk Russia, his statement was further supported by the French and German leaders. Now, these statements have angered Putin. In response, he has said that it does not matter if Ukraine is pulling the trigger, the responsibility lies with those who are supplying these arms. And not only arms, but also troops. Putin claims that Western military instructors are already in Ukraine operating undercover as mercenaries. But any move by any country to send soldiers officially would be seen as an escalation and a step towards a serious conflict in Europe, leading to a global conflict. Those were the words he used. The Biden administration feared just this. That's why it imposed restrictions on Ukraine in the very first place. And it still maintains its stance. Listen to this.
We're aware of the interest that President Zelensky has expressed in this regard. I would tell you that there's no change to our policy at this point. We don't encourage or enable the use of U.S. supplied weapons to strike inside Russia.
For the latest, Kelly, let's get to you quickly. This is a notable shift in policy by the White House, and it comes amid a lot of pressure right now on the administration to get on the same page as what NATO and America's European allies have been saying.
That's right, Peter. And the original intent here was President Biden and his administration wanted to be careful to provide weapons, but to not be so provocative that American weapons could be used inside Russia, perhaps drawing the U.S. into a direct conflict with Russia. That has been one of the principal ideas behind the president's approach since the war in Ukraine began. Now we're at a point 2+ years into the fighting where what we see is that Ukraine has suffered dramatic setbacks over the relentless push from Russia, and some of that is staged inside Russia and then targeting Ukraine. And so making this adjustment, which, as you pointed out, is aligned with some of the thinking of European allies who are also critically important in support for Ukraine, would allow Ukraine to prevent those attacks by striking inside Russia at the bases or operation points where Russian soldiers and forces are working on their own land, but projecting munitions into Ukraine. So that's the sort of scope that we're talking about here. This isn't about going to Moscow or a more aggressive approach.
The northeast of Ukraine is being pounded by Russian missiles and bombs. This is the smoking, wasted city of Vovchansk, sitting in the firing line of the Kremlin's new offensive. But the United States has reversed its policy on the usage of its weapons. Ukraine can now fire American munitions into Russian territory in the northeast of the country as a way of slowing the assault. Since the conflict began, this has been a red line for Washington. But the nightly attacks on Kharkiv and other cities in recent weeks have changed that calculation.
Over the past few weeks, Ukraine came to us and asked for the authorization to use weapons that we're providing to defend against this aggression, including against Russian forces that are massing on the Russian side of the border and then attacking into Ukraine. That went right to the president. And as you've heard, he's approved the use of our weapons for that purpose.
When you hear about this in American news, it is reported very differently in Europe. I mean, they even use that Biden secretly gave that authorization. I mean, if he secretly gave the authorization, why are we hearing about it? How are you reporting it? Anyways, since this happened, Putin has been threatening to go nuclear.
Still in Europe, and Russia's President Vladimir Putin has warned the West about using all available means to defend its sovereignty. When questioned about the risks of nuclear war over Ukraine, Mr. Putin said this morning Russia's nuclear doctrine permits the use of weapons in response to a number of threats. He says the West has repeatedly accused Russia of threatening nuclear, but says this is wrong, and brought attention to America's use of nuclear in World War II.
For some reason, the West believes that Russia will never use it. If someone's actions threaten our sovereignty and territorial integrity, we consider it possible for us to use all means at our disposal. This should not be taken lightly.
And that, of course, is something that he's threatened before.
And now Putin is threatening that he will be providing weapons to strike the West.
Vladimir Putin has held a rare face-to-face meeting with international news agencies in St. Petersburg. The Russian president told journalists the deliveries of German tanks to Ukraine came as a shock. Germany recently joined the US in authorizing Ukraine to hit some targets on Russian soil with the long-range weapons they supply to Kyiv. Mr. Putin says the use of those weapons would mark a dangerous step and could further undermine international security. He's warned Russia could provide its own long-range missiles to others to strike Western targets.
And on top of this, Russia is now reportedly deploying air and sea assets for military exercises in the Caribbean.
Now let's take a look at the US. It has a new problem on its hands. Russia has now officially called the United States an enemy nation. This came from the Kremlin spokesperson, Dmitry Peskov. Let me read out the translation of what he said. And we are an enemy country for them, much like they are for us. Again, that was the Kremlin spokesperson, and this is the first time he's said enemy, because it's not something to be said lightly. Now, you know that Washington and Moscow have never seen eye to eye. They've been on opposite sides in a number of conflicts, most recently in Ukraine. But through 2 years of the Ukraine war, Moscow went out of its way to avoid calling the US an enemy state. Just look at Peskov again. Barely 3 months ago, he said that the US was not the enemy, that Russia did not have any anti-American sentiments. But that has changed now. Why? Perhaps because of last week's escalation. Last week, the United States gave Ukraine a green light to strike Russian territory using American weapons. Ukraine has already begun doing so. They're using American weapons to strike inside Russia, and Russia is furious. Putin says Ukraine is striking Russian territory with the help of Western specialists.
The missile strikes against Russia are done by the Western specialists. We have no illusions about that. What must we do in response? First of all, we will improve our air defense systems to destroy the missiles. Secondly, we think that if someone thinks it is possible to supply such weapons to a combat zone to strike at our territory and create problems for us, why do we not have the right to supply our weapons of the same class to those regions of the world where there will be strikes on the sensitive facilities of those countries that are doing this against Russia?
You heard what he said. Basically, Putin has threatened to turn the tables, to send Russian weapons to Western enemies, long-range weapons that could strike sensitive facilities in the West. And this means that Western enemies could get the ability to strike them at will. It would be a security nightmare for the Western nations that are helping Ukraine.
In the end, if we see that these countries become involved in a war against us, what they are doing makes them directly involved in a war against the Russian Federation, we reserve the right to act the same way. Overall, it leads to some serious problems.
That was Putin's threat. But he isn't just content with that. He's also going for a show of force. Russia is sending combat vessels to the Caribbean Sea, to America's doorstep. Russia will participate in naval exercises in the Caribbean, along with Cuba and possibly Venezuela. Russian aircraft may also be deployed in the region and won't stop there. Here is what US officials have said, and I'm quoting, "We anticipate that this summer Russia will conduct heightened naval and air activity near the United States. These actions will culminate in a global Russian naval exercise this fall." Now, Russia regularly conducts drills in America's backyard, but this time they're expected to be quote-unquote heightened. And the drills will continue for weeks, if not months. This is clearly muscle flexing. Russia wants to show that even while it is busy with Ukraine, it has firepower to spare, and that it can hurt any enemy anywhere in the world. All of this posturing is reminiscent of a different era, of the Cold War, when Russia and the US were constantly on the brink of war, and the rest of us were hoping to not be caught in the nuclear fallout.
Yeah. So what am I getting at here? I'm saying there's a lot of rhetoric for a major escalation, and no one is backing down from it. This is the narrative. You see, whether you believe in nuclear bombs or whatever the case, or you don't believe in them, the narrative speaks of an escalation. You should be ready for some kind of escalation. Now, be clear, this is a problem, but it would not be so alarming if the rest of the world was at peace. But that is absolutely not the case. While this is happening with Russia and Ukraine, the possibilities of war with China and the United States are also escalating. China is moving aggressively around Taiwan.
进入我24海里临界区，我方将采取驱离行动。
I cannot underscore enough how devastating conflict in the Indo-Pacific region would be. At stake would be untold numbers of lives, trillions of dollars in global economic damage, and an international order, the maintenance of the international order that's delivered relative peace and stability over the past 80 years.
Taiwan continues to live under the fear of a Chinese invasion. The massive military drills launched by China are over, but Chinese ships continue to test waters around Taiwan. The US continues to back Taiwan, but how far can Washington go to protect the territory which Beijing says it will retake for sure? Here's a report.
China continues to probe Taiwan. After holding mega military drills, the Chinese jets and naval vessels continue to keep Taiwan on the edge. Taipei says that in the past 24 hours, it detected 21 Chinese military aircraft and 15 Navy or Coast Guard vessels around its territory. China also readying to invade the island nation with an armada of ferries and civilian vessels. According to reports, Chinese military could use civilian vessels as amphibious landing craft. The civilian vessel could include dozens of gigantic roll-on, roll-off ferries that can each carry hundreds of armored vehicles. A visiting US lawmaker affirmed Washington's support for Taipei against Chinese aggression. This is the first congressional visit to the self-ruled island since it swore in a new president.
For all democracies must stand together against aggression and tyranny, whether it's Putin in Russia, the Ayatollah in Iran, or Chairman Xi next door to us in China.
The words of support for Taipei drew a sharp response from Beijing.
China firmly opposes US-Taiwan military ties, opposes arming Taiwan, and urges relevant US congressmen to stop playing the Taiwan card and stop interfering in China's internal affairs.
Last week, during the two-day drills, China vowed that independence forces would be left with their heads broken and blood flowing. 3D animated videos showed missiles raining down on Taiwanese cities.
So what do China's drills around Taiwan tell us? Our military analyst Sean Bell joins me in the studio. So Sean, first of all, let's discuss why Taiwan is so important to China.
Yeah, good afternoon, Simon. I mean, the South China Sea is at a crossroads, really, of two global maritime routes. It's a link between the Indian and Pacific Oceans. About a third of the global trade runs through this area. Also, in the South China Sea, there are massive oil and gas reserves. They've quoted that 11 billion barrels of oil are in there, and that, by reference, that's about 30 years of UK production. It's a huge amount. Now, China's been absolutely building artificial islands all over the place, militarizing them in trying to extend their influence there. Now, China's always insisted that Taiwan is part of its orbit. It will reunify at some stage. So the question is now, were these drills just a sort of one of these periodic issues that crops up, or is there something slightly more sinister? And given the fact they only gave 45 minutes warning for them, it does appear China's testing Taiwan's defensive capability.
Yeah, so let's explore that more then. The recent drills followed decades of tension, as we've said. Do you think China's any closer then to actually invading Taiwan?
It does feel as if the situation is changing slightly. You remember the last time they did these drills was back in August 2022 when Nancy Pelosi famously did that visit to Taiwan. But Xi Jinping has been hosting President Putin in a sort of state visit only last week. They've talked about their sort of limitless partnership. Now, Xi Jinping wants to change the world order, the US-led world order. That resonates with President Putin. Also, China's very interested in how Putin's getting on with the invasion of Ukraine, because although the West has been involved to provide ammunition and weapons, it hasn't directly intervened. And all of that will inform Xi Jinping's judgment about whether to go into Taiwan. So it feels like time's not on China's side. So China's judgment probably will be the West won't intervene, take about 3 months to take the islands, and they just live with the consequences. And the trouble is with all of this, it just feels it's more likely now when rather than if China decides to take action against Taiwan.
And so Biden makes a statement about it, but because the sound bites are horrible and he really can't speak, they use a magazine interview with Time magazine, and they say that he said this about defending Taiwan.
U.S. President Joe Biden has reiterated his possible military support for Taiwan in case of a Chinese invasion. In an interview with Time magazine, Biden said he was, quote, not ruling out using U.S. military force. Reese, what are Biden's latest comments on the subject, and what do they mean for U.S.-Taiwan relations?
Well, Eric, Biden's language wasn't crystal clear. He said, quote, we are not seeking independence for Taiwan, nor will we in fact not defend Taiwan if China unilaterally tries to change the status. Now, hidden beneath that double negative there, what Biden's essentially saying is that military support for Taiwan is on the table. Then when questioned on if the U.S. could strike from allied bases in Japan or the Philippines, Joe Biden said, I can't get into that. Now, Biden's responses don't signify any change in policy regarding Taiwan, and the U.S. continues to sell Taiwan the arms that it needs to defend itself. But his comments will likely not be received well by China, and may act as a kind of tacit statement of support for Taiwan.
And to now add to it, the Philippines are now in the South China Sea, provoking conflict with China as well.
Under the Marcos Jr. administration, tensions in the South China Sea are reaching a boiling point.
Compared to previous years, 2023, to include the first quarter of 2024, is a marked escalation.
Meanwhile, the Philippines draws closer to its oldest ally.
Any attack on Philippine public vessel or Philippine metropolitan territory would be considered an attack on the United States.
What is behind the rise in hostilities?
Perhaps President Marcos might be of the view that China promises a lot, but then maybe delivers not up to what it has promised.
From Beijing's point of view, it's Marcos who's trying to make an issue out of this.
And are China and the Philippines headed towards armed conflict?
We cannot totally take out the possibility of possible conflict, possible accident that could, disturb the status quo in the South China Sea.
You see, there is clear provocation going on that those of us in the United States are not being prepared for, but those living internationally are receiving a lot of news about it. None of this should be outside of your worldview and something that you're not being prepared for mentally. You should be mentally prepared about what happens if this escalates. And we, of course, know what is going on with Israel and Hamas, because this agenda they want us fully engaged in. That war in Israel is all about bringing about the one world religion and bringing people into control by the beast. All of this is, but the war in Israel is very specific, and it's been an agenda planned out for a century and a half.
As Passover approaches, Jewish extremist groups have again pledged to take over the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound under the protection of Israeli security forces. Palestinians view the move as a violation of the status quo. The Jordanian Waqf, or Islamic Trust, that manages the compound, has criticized the planned incursions.
Every holiday that passes for the Jews, tensions and violations occur, and this is unacceptable. Everyone has his own holiday, so it's not permissible to mix and merge Jewish holidays with the blessed Al-Aqsa Mosque.
Even though Jewish worshippers are not allowed to pray, many usually do. It's a way to establish a presence inside the compound. We are inside the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound, where ultra-nationalist and extremist Jewish settlers are planning to storm Al-Aqsa in large numbers during the Jewish Passover holiday. They're also planning to slaughter 5 red cows. Slaughtering a red cow is believed by Jewish extremists to be a divine commandment that paves the way for the building of the third temple, replacing the Dome of the Rock. The war on Gaza has entered its 7th month with no end in sight, and one reason for the Hamas attack on southern Israel is hardly mentioned. In a speech, Hamas military brigade spokesman Abu Ubaida blames the Jews for bringing red cows to the Holy Land. Israel imported 5 red heifers back in 2022, and some Jews and Christians believe the key to rebuilding the so-called Jewish temple is to hasten the arrival of the Messiah.
But to me, what's really alarming is this next piece of news that is going over the internet, but yet the news agencies are not covering it. It brings me back to that segment I was speaking about from Mission Impossible, talking about the truth. It is being said that Saudi Arabia has chosen not to renew the 50-year petrodollar agreement with the United States. They say it expires June 9th. Now, again, it is not spoken of by the media, but that doesn't mean anything to me. I really don't know how true this is and if it's fake news or just unreported news. I don't really know. I just know that this is what's being reported. And when you take into the deals that Saudi Arabia was making with China and the fact that they joined BRICS, then you can kind of allude to that this could be real. But again, there is nothing that actually is stating this in the mainstream. So I'm not saying that this is a fact. But if it is true, it's very alarming. This is what I do know though. And it's all found if you just look at the price of gold and the price of Bitcoin over the last year and a half. Just look at the price of gold from 2023 to now. If you look at that, there is something happening. In the beginning of 2023, gold was trading around $1,800 an ounce. In about 18 months, it has an unprecedented move to about $2,400 an ounce, an all-time high against the dollar. Something is making it move in this way. And it's the same story for Bitcoin, but Bitcoin is even more dramatic. In the beginning of 2023, Bitcoin was around $17,000 a coin. Now it's around $71,000 per coin. You may want to look at it and think it's about gold or think it's about Bitcoin, but it's actually about the United States dollar. The US dollar is being heavily devalued, but no one is really discussing it or even discussing the reasons why. But in the midst of all of this, what is happening is that the stock market is hitting all-time highs. It continues to climb. It was climbing when rates were at 0% and still climbing at all-time highs when rates are at 5%. But there's little noise about it.
Those days where you do clap and cheer because you are looking at record highs for at least 2 of the major indices. That includes the S&P 500, which is going to close higher by about 63 points or about 1.2%. It takes a while for these numbers to settle, but the NASDAQ composite also higher by 330 points or roughly 2% on the day. The NASDAQ 100 up about 2% here on the day as well. The Dow Jones Industrial Average higher by 96 points or 0.3%, and the Russell 2000 going to close out the day higher by 1.5% here. But the big drum roll here, guys, is who finished higher on the day in market cap, Nvidia or Apple?
But while this is happening, major companies are closing and going bankrupt. Major companies.
The economy and what can really be described as mixed signals. While more Americans are definitely feeling positive, there are still some warning signs.
That's right. The layoffs are already piling up this year, and we're just a few weeks into 2024. Wayfair announcing it's preparing to lay off at least 13% of its global workforce. And the publisher of the iconic Sports Illustrated magazine saying that most of its staff will be let go. The union calling it a very difficult day for its members. And it comes after Macy's announcement earlier this week, the company laying off about 3.5% of its total headcount, roughly 2,300 employees.
And to add to this, there's still a lot of talk about a lot more banks failing because of a coming crisis with commercial real estate and debt. So there's a lot on the table, but stocks are continuously climbing and acting like nothing can bring them down. What I'm trying to say is that there is a massive amount of world events that are pressing and screaming change. That's what they're saying to me. They've been screaming this for years, and things are not de-escalating, but problems are growing, and the narratives are building to a climatic peak. I am very much watching and focused on the geopolitical events because, as I have said in my End Time series, I am waiting for the second seal to be opened and for peace to be taken from the earth. I personally believe that all this escalation around the world is all about leading up to it all. And like I said, this war in Israel is accomplishing the exact agenda that Albert Pike has been said to plan a century and a half ago. But while all this is brewing, what do they have us really focused on? Yes, Donald Trump and this coming US presidential election. And you see, it's not just the United States that's focused on it. It's the whole world. People all over the world in these many nations around the world are focused on what happens with the United States. And they have already told us indirectly to be prepared for unprecedented events. Everything with this presidential election is ridiculous. We have two candidates that no one really wants, but yet they're still engaged over and fighting for on both sides. We have Donald Trump recently convicted on 34 counts of felony charges, and there's civil war talk on all sides, while we just had a movie about civil war recently released that I have not seen yet. We have actual certainty that there's going to be a problem with this election because they keep alluding to this. We have people saying that there may be problems with even certifying the election results if we even get that far. You must remember that in order to collapse this system, they have to collapse the democracy that the United States created. They have to say that this experiment of the United States has failed and this will usher in their new order. This is all an agenda. You see, there are nothing but distractions that they are bombarding us with that are really clearly orchestrated at a time of great change in this world. And they have agendas for everyone. You see, for those who do not care about Donald Trump in the election, they also have come with the distraction about Diddy that seems to not want to go away. Every day, every week, there's some new revelation about this immoral character that we all knew was bad. And for people not distracted enough with that, we have the NBA Finals about to start. And if that wasn't enough, we now have new news about Fauci and COVID, new news being released providing more distractions. The same things they were once giving us strikes on social media for mentioning, they are now saying was actually true. They're just playing games with all of us. Everywhere you look, there is a distraction, while war is approaching and there is a great reset on the horizon ready to happen. And what it is that I'm trying to say here is that you must be very wise at this very present time. We are all in a period where our complete reality is up for grabs. They are attacking our minds in order to steer us into their revolution. They are going to bring chaos so they can usher in their order. Like, think about it. Why are they now revealing this about Fauci and now allowing us to believe that we shouldn't have been trusting them in the first place? Why are they now convicting Donald Trump? They could have done this anytime. Why is it now that they are coming after Diddy, who just a few years ago they gave a Lifetime Achievement Award to? They all knew this stuff was happening. Why now are they letting it be revealed? It's all distractions, and their goal is to keep you attached to it while they pull the rug out from under you. The real agenda is that they are playing with everyone's minds and keeping everyone from living in the truth that brings you power. They don't want you living in the actual truth that brings power. They don't care anymore if you focus on dumb conspiracies. Matter of fact, their algorithms are pushing them. It was like over a decade and a half ago when I started really waking up, and I was speaking about all these conspiracy theories and trying to show people how fake this world was. Nobody wanted to hear them, and being labeled a conspiracy theorist was a derogatory term. Now it seems that conspiracy theories are the norm, and they're accepted. They show these little clips with this dumb music, and everybody's captivated by, look how this is happening, and look how they're exposing this. This is a conspiracy, and that is conspiracy. People love hearing about conspiracies and the devil, while not actually doing anything about it. They love to see that the devil is there, but they don't actually want to do anything about it. You really have to stop and analyze and wonder why. Why now? But either way, for those that do not wish to be trapped in this matrix and be led according to their agendas, I have very serious yet sincere advice that I would like to give. This advice comes from my experience. You see, I have peace in this world. I have peace that I would not trade for anything. And it's all because of these mindsets and this advice that I'm about to give. It's not in any particular order, but it's how I live my life, and I would like to share it and hope it blesses you. The first thing I want you to know is that you must be really focused right now on Yahuwah and live in his truths. Your answer is found in the word. It's not in the world. You must truly know what Yah has promised us, and you must live in it. You see, the reason I have done this series on the end times is to present you with a playlist that you can always refer back to that can help you better adjust your expectations of this world. You must understand Bible prophecy, and you must trust in Yah to deliver his promises. The reason I'm doing this series on the Torah is because we cannot live in lawlessness. And you will find that once you start attaching yourself to Yah and doing what he loves and being against what he hates, you will find more peace and you will find a deeper connection in your relationship with him. So you must be focused right now on him and live in his truths. The second thing I want you to be aware of is the world that you're actually in. You gotta be in reality. Please know that evil exists and there are evil people in control of everything, especially in the mainstream. If you are one that is on the fence and you are still playing devil's advocate or you live in the gray area, you're going to fall. You must stand in your convictions and you cannot falter. The world's evil. You need to deal with that reality. Next, move away from all these conspiracies. If you've been watching this channel long enough, it should be clear now that everything you have known has been a lie. Yeah, they've been lying to us. When I say move away from the conspiracies, it does not mean stop believing that they're happening. It means expect that they are, but stop focusing on them. There are falsehoods and lies, and people that are actively working against you. Know this. This is the reality. There's a difference between understanding what they have done with our biblical doctrine versus understanding why they have poisoning our food and doing all this with our water and medicine and all these other things, all these other conspiracies. There are differences. You need to know that those that are still actively seeking out these conspiracies are also being distracted. But many of them, they can't see that because they feel that they're waking up. I have friends trying to show me conspiracy clips of things I was bringing to them 10 years ago. When I see them send me these things, I just get bothered and sad for them because I know they're still trapped and they're still lost. They cannot connect the dots. You must hear this, and please know this. There is no power in the lie. There is no power in the lie. Just because you see the lie and the lie has been exposed to you, that does not bring you power. The only power comes from living in the truth, and the truth is not what your algorithms will be recommending. If you're still searching and trying to find out why people are evil and why people could sell their souls and do all this wickedness, you are distracted. The truth is simple. These people are leading you to Satan. Many of them have sold their souls. Know that and move on. The next thing, with all that said, you need to be mindful of your algorithms. You must understand that what you see on these social media sites, it's not by accident. These algorithms are not meant to protect you, but to keep you engaged and to confuse you. When searching online, be mindful of what is being suggested to you and do not eat at too many different tables. They are coming for your mind and your soul. Like people that follow me but believe that the millennial kingdom already came. Why are you on my site? Why are you following my channel? You're eating from too many different tables. If you feel the millennial kingdom already came, you should leave mine. Or if you feel that Yahusha is not the Messiah and that's another ploy, you should not follow my channel. You're eating from too many different tables. Either way, this system is coming for your mind and your soul. They want you distracted and asleep while you actually think you're waking up. Next, be prepared for change. Don't live in ignorance and be a victim waiting to just react. Be proactive. Everything in this world is screaming change is coming. The only thing we don't know is when it will happen. Please do not live in ignorance. Be ready and be prepared for change. Mentally, physically, but above all, spiritually. Also know, fear is not an option. If you have fear, it means you don't have faith. You don't have trust in Yah. Fear is not an option. Next, stay out of all sides in all of these conflicts. If you have a side with Trump and Biden, you are deceived. If you have a side with Russia and Ukraine, you are deceived. If you have a side with Israel and Hamas, you are deceived. The only side you need to be on is Yah's side, and his side is clear based on his word. Stay out of everything else. Next, you must know that if you are on Yah's side, everything happening in this world, all these conflicts and agendas don't have anything to do with you. These agendas are for the lost in order to steer them to believe their narratives, in order to steer them to the beast or die in rebellion. These agendas are not for you. Do not attach yourself to them. Next, know how to tune it all out. Silence right now can be your best friend. Turn off the news. Stop investigating all of this stuff. Learn how to live in silence and in peace. Which goes to my next point. You must be a protector of your peace. It is your peace that is being attacked in order for you to be steered in their agendas. They know that if they can grab you emotionally and move you through your emotions, they can control you. Like, If they're talking right now and telling you that everything they talked about during COVID was a lie and all these things were actually against you, and they're admitting that now, that means that the agenda they have coming to you next, and they know that it doesn't even matter that they were lying to you in the first place, because you're going to follow them. You must protect your peace, and you will find that your peace will only come through full trust and assurance in the Most High. Listen, the next is enjoy your life. Be happy. Praise Yah daily for what He has given you, and do not think about the worries or cares that this world is telling you to focus on. If you trust in Yah, all will be provided for you. So live in assurance and be happy. Next, understand, if you're not reading your Bible every day, you are not being wise. This is what brings you assurance. This is what keeps you in the truth. Read your Bible daily. This next point is something that may be hard to hear, but please know that you may have to let many of your family and friends go that you know that you are unequally yoked with. There are people that you know and love that will not go where Yah is trying to lead you. If they do not love Yah in the same way that you do, there's nothing you can do about that. Some people you may have to let go of in this hour. Now please do not misunderstand me. This does not mean that you cannot be there for them and that you're not supposed to witness to them. That is not what I'm saying. But many of you are tied to the enemy because of love, because of fear, because of blind loyalty that these same people don't have for you. You're tied to them due to obligation. Some situations, I get it, they're deeper than others. Like many of you may be married to these people. It all must be dealt with in prayer. But listen, you must walk in your conviction. And if there are people around you that are hindering you from doing that, they are a liability, and you need to know how to let go, or at least how to walk in confidence, regardless if these people support you or they don't. But some people you're going to have to let go of and understand that they have made their decision and you cannot tie yourself to them. And lastly, you have to be honest with yourself and really do self-inventory. Ask yourself, are you distracted? Do you sometimes play devil's advocate? Are you too focused on the wrong things? It's really important that you yourself really take inventory on yourself and then fix the problems. Listen, I have a lot to say on all this, but my warning to everyone is simple. Do not be distracted and caught off guard. These people are working against us in order to move us in their satanic agenda. There is nothing but evidence that reveals this. This world is trying to move the world into accepting a satanic agenda that leads everyone into accepting the lawless one that is coming. If you cannot see this yourself, this means that you are in the strong delusion. For the mystery of lawlessness is already at work. Only he who now restrains will do so until he is taken out of the way. And then the lawless one will be revealed, whom the Adon will consume with the breath of his mouth and destroy with the brightness of his coming. The coming of the lawless one is according to the working of Satan, with all power, signs, and lying wonders, and with all unrighteous deception among those who perish, because they did not receive the love of the truth that they might be saved. And for this reason, Elohim will send them strong delusion that they should believe the lie, that they all may be condemned who did not believe the truth, but had pleasure in unrighteousness. 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verses 7 through 12. Please, believe the truth and do not have pleasure in unrighteousness. We are encouraged to stand fast and hold the traditions which you were taught, whether by word or our epistle. May our Adon Yahusha the Messiah himself and our Elohim and Father, who has loved us and has given us everlasting consolation and good hope by grace, comfort your hearts and establish you in every good word and work. That's 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verses 15 through 17. Please understand, I did not show you all these things to create fear in you. I'm just showing you what I see and what I don't see that people are aware of. There's a lot more actually, but I'm not trying to provoke fear. But no, if you do have fear, it's only because you have not made Yahuwah your priority enough. As I said in my video about the second Exodus, I'm waiting for Yah to gather us. The world has to move in this direction in order for our promises to come. I am not worried or scared. I am excited and waiting in anticipation for our promises. What we all should be doing right now is making Yahuwah our priority. If there is something you don't understand, seek him out in his word. Stay in prayer. Focus on Him only and how to serve Him. Focus on trusting Him. Focus on being led by His Ruach. Focus on being obedient to His word and His Torah. Believe in Yahusha the Messiah and be redeemed through His sacrifice. Focus on being Yahuwah's servant and how you will serve Him. Seek out His will to be done. Ask Him what He wants from you and be ready to do as He desires. You see, we are in the most crucial moment of history, and it will not make complete sense until they actually start it all. I've tried to stay away from these warnings because I feel like I have given enough of them. But it is clear that they are taking things up another level with these distractions. I mean, Trump being convicted, then this COVID and Fauci thing, while new layers about Diddy keep coming out, but war is on the horizon and CNN is focused on nonsense. It's clear they want us distracted, and I just want to be a voice that tells you not to be distracted. Each one of us are in a war and battle for our souls. Our fight becomes easier when we learn how to live in the truth and not waver. We become stronger when we commit to Yah and we trust Him. And so I am pleading with all that will hear me to tune out the noise and focus on Yah. When you are focused on Yah, living in the blessings He has provided you, you walk in more power and authority in this world, and that scares the devil. That's why he wants you distracted, so you do not operate in the power that Yahuwah has given you. Everyone's life is different. Don't compare your life or your blessings to others. Run your race and endure to the end. The devil does not want you to endure, and I am making this video pleading with Yasharel, natural and grafted in, to continue to fight the good fight of faith and endure to the end. I honestly don't believe we have too much time before they escalate, but I could be wrong. I've been wrong before. But one thing I know is that as long as I have stayed focused on Yah, He has kept me in peace, and I will not trade it for anything. So yes, I look at the world, I read headlines, I see what's happening, but it does not steal my peace nor my joy, because none of what is going on has anything to do with me, because I am covered by the Most High. And if you live in this understanding and walk in the power of that assurance, you will pass through the fire and not be scorched. You will climb through the mountains with ease. The enemy will flee from you because he knows he cannot touch you. So please understand and know that the world is changing. And yes, things are happening, and you must be ready for them. But it is not a time for fear, but a time to rejoice and live in praise. Guard your heart, guard your mind, guard your soul. Protect your peace, and do not let the devil distract you. Please know and believe the kingdom of Yahuwah is at hand. Be ready for it, and we will all come together soon and rejoice. Be blessed. Hallelujah. Praise Yah. Okay, thanks again for watching. If this has blessed you, please make sure to like it and share this video with others. If you haven't done so already, please make sure you subscribe to this channel. Yah willing, I upload every Friday. Also, please don't forget to follow this ministry on Facebook and Instagram, as well as on my website, truthunedited.com. Please continue to pray for this ministry. Please know your prayers and your support are sincerely appreciated. I thank you sincerely to all those who have been supporting this ministry. Your contribution is a huge blessing to the ministry, and it truly helps me continue on with this assignment. Thank you for being a blessing. I'm always humbled by your support, and I'm very thankful for you. Be blessed. Okay, thanks again everyone for watching. I love you all.